There's no such thing as questions, just hidden answers. Stay tuned to PH Murder Stories as we revisit the inconceivable crimes that exist.
Some listeners may find the following content of PH Murder Stories highly disturbing due to its graphic nature. PH Murder Stories does not condone nor promote violence in all sorts. Viewer discretion is advised.
On February 14, 1993, a Filipina woman in the United Kingdom suddenly disappeared after being last seen at a Valentine's Day party. According to a relative, before the woman's sudden disappearance, she confessed that she feared for her life at the hands of her abusive husband.
China Rose Sims was only 36 years old at the time of her disappearance. She met her husband, David Sims, through an international dating agency in the Philippines. Ironically, both were married on Valentine's Day, 1988.
After the wedding, David and China returned to the UK as husband and wife. In 1991, David bought a dilapidated house in Southend, where he moved in with China and a friend, Jeffrey Paston, who also had a Filipina girlfriend named Josie. David Sims joined the police in the late 1960s and was a popular, trusted officer. But his personality changed soon after he was appointed to the Special Patrol Group, or SPG.
SPG officers are often the first to attend public order disputes and have been accused of using excessive force. They were implicated in the death of the London teacher Blair Peach after an anti-National Front demonstration in Southall. David soon began drinking heavily and started showing violent tendencies. His 3 ex-wives have cited that the reason for divorcing him was his violent temper tantrums due to excessive drinking.
He was known for his dependency on alcohol and violent outbursts while on duty and at home. China Rose was his 4th wife. Earlier, David was kicked out of the controversial SPG in the 1970s for attacking an inspector during a drunken rage.
After leaving the police and failing as a pub landlord, David started a second-hand furniture chain. In 1991, David used the name Anthony Peter Lewis, or Tony, the same name he also used in business transactions. One of his businesses was a buy and sell shop from Thailand.
It was known that David and China Rose often flew to Thailand for their shop, but unfortunately, the business did not prosper. To make ends meet, China Rose took a part-time job as a caregiver in 1993. It seemed that David was not taking this change in their lives well, because China Rose disclosed to her sister, Joy, over the phone that he was beating her regularly out of frustration.
According to Joy, her last conversation with her sister was about wanting to leave David. However, she has nowhere to go. China Rose said that her husband once told her that he would, quote, get someone to kill her because it would be much cheaper than getting a divorce, unquote. China Rose was last seen at a party on February 14, 1993, and the last firm sighting of David Sims was alone at their Southend home about a month later.
Although they have yet to find the body, the police were convinced that China Rose has been murdered. Despite being devoted to her father, who was very ill when she disappeared and has since died, She made no attempt to check on his health or contact her brothers and sisters. This meant that something wrong might have really happened to China Rose Sims.
Initially, authorities believed that Jeffrey Paston, the friend of China Rose and David Sims, could be responsible for their disappearance. In 1996, 3 years after the sudden disappearance of China Rose and David Sims, officers from Essex Police, together with agents from the Philippine Bureau of Immigration, traveled to Jeffrey Paston, who was then living in Tacloban City in the province of Leyte.
Paston denied allegations that he was behind the disappearance of China Rose and David Sims. He told police that he feared for his life and that heavy characters were involved in David and his wife's disappearance. Paston also said that 2 years earlier, David asked him to sell the South End house and put the proceeds in a new bank account in the name of Anthony Peter Lewis, also known as the business name of David Sims.
The money, worth nearly 40,000 British pounds, was collected by a man claiming to represent David Sims, who may have flown to Thailand. At least 10,000 British pounds of the sale proceeds remain in a British bank account in the name of Anthony Peter Lewis, also known as David Sims.
However, there has been no attempt to access the funds. Authorities believe that David Sims is either dead or has found a highly lucrative alternative source of income, such as heroin trafficking. Meanwhile, a detective working on the case said, quote, Sims had connections with a bar business in both Manila and Thailand, and he may have begun trading in drugs. It is also possible that he may have been murdered as a result of such shady business dealings.
David Sims had 2 daughters by his first marriage, and while he was not close to either, he would always send them birthday or Christmas cards. They have heard nothing since 1991. His eldest daughter, Linda, is now convinced her father is dead. She said, quote, he was a jack-the-lad and a bit cocky. He also had a terrible temper. He could well have got himself into trouble. I think he has come to a sticky end. Unquote.
In 2001, 8 years after the disappearance of David and China Rose Sims, police in the UK intensified efforts to track down David Sims after receiving a tip-off that he may be living under a new identity in the Far East area of the country. Detective Constable Fred Simpkins, who was also the lead officer of the investigation, said, quote, Mr. Sims could be seen as a suspect, but they've both been officially missing for years. So we could be talking about a double murder. After 7 years, a person can be presumed legally dead in the United Kingdom. Unquote.
28 years have passed. Both China Rose and David Sims are still missing to this day. It is unknown whether authorities in the United Kingdom are still looking for them. It seems like their disappearance has put up more questions rather than answers. Did David Sims kill China Rose? Did China Rose run away to save herself from the possibility of being killed by her abusive husband? Or did someone kill both China Rose and David Sims?
Unfortunately, we might not ever know the real story behind their disappearance. Both their families believe they are dead, which is a tragic end to their story that started on Valentine's Day. Have you listened to part 1 of the merciless murder of Abel Pineda? Stay tuned on your preferred podcast platforms. For further updates, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter @phmurderstories, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, PH Murder Stories. This podcast is brought to you by Review Visuals. Did you like this episode? Give us a rating on Apple Podcasts, or if you're listening in other platforms, kindly send us a review on our Facebook page or send us a tweet. You can also share our podcast to your Instagram and Facebook stories through Spotify. Your support would significantly benefit PH Murder Stories to produce more quality content. We're also inviting you to join our Facebook group, PH Murder Stories: The Verdict, and participate in our bi-weekly discourse about true crime, both local and international. This group is a safe space for true crime and mystery fans like us who want to engage in thorough discussions about the subject. See you there, suspects. The verdict is in your hands. See you there.
One of the most gruesome murders towards an overseas Filipino worker happened in 2016 when authorities from Kuwait discovered the body of a missing Filipina placed in a freezer at an abandoned apartment. The gruesome discovery of her remains sent shockwaves across the OFW community. In 2007, a young mother fighting for custody of her two daughters suddenly disappeared. 2 years later, she was found cemented inside a drum dumped in the waters of Navota City, Metro Manila. After a valid testimony of a disgruntled witness who later on recanted his story and became missing up to this date. At midnight of July 18, 2002, a 32-year-old British businessman was found murdered at his apartment in Makati City, Metro Manila. For years, the case would go unsolved, while his mother battled to piece together the clues of his death. Want to hear the rest of these sensational true crime stories? Subscribe as a prime suspect at our Patreon page and get one bonus exclusive case every month for only $5. Patreon is a way to join your favorite creators community and pay them for making the stuff you love. You can now pay a few bucks per month or per post that the creator makes. For more updates, please visit our website at phmurderstories.com, subscribe to our YouTube channel, PH Murder Stories, and follow our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at PH Murder Stories.